Welcome back. We are blasting off out of this world. And again, with me, I have Clint, our resident Freemasonic expert and all things mystery schools and secret societies. I don't know anybody who is as knowledgeable on these topics as Clint. You should go check out his channel on YouTube, and I will put the links to that down below. But today I have him with me talking about the mysterious Sirius, the star that is venerated by mystery religions, ancient Egypt, Babylon, Persia, Freemasons, Mormons, you name it, they are worshiping Sirius. And we have so much for you today. And I just wanted to start out with this quote that you found in this book. Clint found it called The Dark Side of Freemasonry. You got that one too, right? Yep. And our thesis today and what this is going to revolve around is the notion that Freemasonic rituals in particular are designed to create a hive mind mentality. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it seems to be ritual magic according to them, but it seems all psychological and um so when in witchcraft, for example, when the initiate takes the dagger and draws the circle around them, it's a symbol of them being the star Sirius, and the circle and the dagger is the sun going around the star. And then with masonry, the compass is the same thing, and that the symbolism goes. I mean, all the secret societies are obsessed with the Osirian cycle,
Hmm.
which I'm sure you're familiar. But
Hmm.
so this is a quote by Albert Pike, real quick. Sirius, called by the Egyptians Sothis and by the Hebrews Kaleb Anubak. So the etymology Anubak is where the word Anubis is comes into to mind. But
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we found this quote, and this is what we're going to be talking about, how it is designed to get everybody initiated into this mystery school to complete their great work. And they all work as one. And this quote is from Alice Bailey's husband. So she's known as the Queen of the New Age, right? Alice Bailey, the Theosophist. And her husband, Foster Bailey, was a 33rd degree Mason. And he wrote a book called The Spirit of Masonry. And in it, he says, it is the creative nature of the Masonic work to work, say, and think the same thing simultaneously. The concentrated attention and thought power of the assembled Masons is in reality a group meditation leading to group work. Masonry, in its true and highest sense, is magical work. The effectiveness of this possible work will be paralleled by the increasing sensitivity of the race to telepathic impression. Behind the magical work of the rituals must be the influence of the established rhythm. The materializing upon earth of the mystical vision must be brought about by the wise working of this law of rhythm and ritual. And this is going to get so weird because now we are seeing people reporting alien craft and alien visitation, alien communication telepathically. They say there's a mothership in the Gulf of Mexico. It's just aliens are popping off in 2025. We've got all the drones in New Jersey, and it won't be long. I mean, all of the disclosure people, the alien people, Stephen Greer and those kind of people, they're starting up podcasts. They say they have big revelations to tell everybody. So before all of this new information becomes mainstream, I wanted to get ahead of it, and we're going to talk about Sirius uh, specifically
oh
because
yeah,
they say that this is where life came from, according to mystery schools and Freemasonic lore, right?
yeah, they think it's the center of the universe. But by the way, I do believe Stephen Greer is a undercover or some kind of con artist. William Cooper believes the same thing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
well, before I forget, the rhythm that they Alice Bailey speaks of,
Uh-huh.
past, present, future, and like so, a lot of the modern secret societies they claim to be from antiquity, but they're not, and
Mm.
that they use this idea of the past, and then because remember, it's the full body of the initiates is Horus the Conquering Child, and so later in the book they state that they're going to initiate the masses into the third degree, which is the secular humanism,
Hmm.
and that well, I guess more along the lines of those that group meditation. All the Masons, every I think it's the first Wednesday, depending on uh which one you're in. They'll meet all at the same time on the same day and do the same ritual, etc. But so imagine pop culture where the music is playing and that everybody across the whole country hears it on the radio, sings it at the same time, and then it creates a group meditation.
Hmm.
And that this is what they're doing is very it seems to be an ancient tribal technique that was in the Archon Dai rule book. He goes over the different tribal techniques, the primitive techniques of initiation, and drums,
Hmm.
uh, flashing lights. The it's like so these. It seems as though, well, not only that, but when they say the telepathic impression. So it goes two ways where it's like they're having a telepathic impression, and then at the same time they also have a telepathic sense, according to them, that someone is not uh existing in the singularity that they exist in. And so then they'll
Hmm.
reject the outsider. They
Hmm.
will expel them from the group.
Hmm. This is a lot like any given alien invasion movie that is like pod people themed. You know, you've got your your little squeacher guys that come and like get on your face, and then they steal your soul, and you become part of their hive mind, right? And the people
Yeah.
who are not in that collective, like you said, are easily identified because they have their own mind, right?
Yeah. One of us, one
Yeah,
of us.
exactly. Just like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he can see like that's one that's not of us.
Oh yeah, that when they point and scream.
Yeah, exactly. So, before we go into masonry, I just kind of wanted to talk about Sirius itself, like just as the star and how interesting it is because I went through all of this whole book, Sirius Mystery. This was written in 1976 and it has updates from the 90s in it. And it's also mentioned in that book that we did with Baselit Analyzer, the Stargate Conspiracy. So this is part of the codex of works that posit that beings from outer space, specifically from Sirius, have been to Earth and seeded life on Earth and are periodically, visited and updated when the time is right. So, a lot of this book is based on the work that he did about the Dogon tribe of Mali, Africa. So, I'm sure you've heard of them, right? David Icke talks about them a lot. He's the Dogon, right?
Yeah.
And so the Dogon have this secret society, basically, of initiates who hold the secrets of Sirius. And the interesting thing about this is, they're a very primitive tribe, but they knew before the invention of telescopes or anything like that, that Sirius was at least a binary star and
Yeah.
possibly a trinary star. And everything that they had passed down in their secret society became, mainstream scientific discoveries once we discovered telescopes and we could see farther, right?
Yeah. They had a dance every 60 years when the Sirius A and B would complete a full revolution. They would perform a ceremony where the major guy would wear some kind of very tall hat, and
Yeah.
the the serious stuff, it goes back to Egypt where
Yes.
Osiris is another name is Osiris.
Hmm.
Babylon, Astarte was a Sirius. Ishtar, Astara was the word for the star, and Ashtara for in Aramaic meant Sirius.
Hmm.
Even I'm related to the Blackfoot tribe, and they have a name for Sirius, the dog face, and
Hmm.
that Hebrew phrase I read, Kalaba Nubak, that's means barking dog.
Hmm.
and that so the Hebrews were, but even in China, there's I mean, every culture seems to name this star after the dog for Anubis, and that the it goes back to the Masonic initiation where Hiram Abiff is raised from the dead, who's a symbol of Osiris, but the symbol of the initiates raising him from the dead, the first word that's used is Mekbanak, which is an Egyptian word, in that it means the skin tears from the flesh, and
Mm.
that they're talking about the grip. They couldn't raise him up with a regular grip, quote unquote. And so, and then the next word was the Maha bone, which
Uh-huh.
is uh, it's a replacement word for the Tetragrammaton. But but see, it's like that type of stuff. What I'm talking about there, this Alice Bailey stuff. This seems to be more modern in that it seems like the Illuminists, they'll absorb anything they can and they'll stretch its doctrine to move to the rhythm of their beat. And that it's like when I was reading this one Nasta Webster book, and I found out, and she's a really brilliant writer, but she's horribly racist. But like the but she was pointing out how Mesmer was an original member of the Illuminati,
Uh-huh.
and that I'm sure you're familiar with Mesmer.
Yep. Anton
Yeah,
Mesmer. That's where we get the word mesmerism.
yeah, and so these people were masters of psychology,
Hmm.
and that their symbolism, well, so to bring it back, I mean, this is kind of goes to the old Mason stuff where the Ankh, I was trying to tell you about this. The Ankh is the a precursor symbol of the hammer and the disc, and that the hammer was also the tree, and that the tree and the disc was an Ouroboros, and
Hmm.
that so the tree and the serpent, the symbol from the Old Testament,
Hmm.
and that so when the Egyptians are eating the ankhs, it's a symbol of them invoking the star, and
Mm.
that the hammer and the disc became, according to the Rosicrucians, the rose and the cross, and that the rose was synonymous with the heart. The
Hmm.
heart was a symbol of the upside down flame, the eternal flame. So
So,
they
uh,
were inverting the flame of the it's hard to explain, but in the older times Jesus was associated with fire, and that
so when you say eating ankhs, were they eating like a bread or like a cracker or some kind of communion?
well, I think it was just symbolic for
Oh,
them
okay.
because they lacked adjectives, and so they would create stories to explain, the movements of the heavens, and that's why so in the Egyptian story, Isis, she has a child that is not bequeath of her husband or
Hmm.
whatever, and so or no, I can't remember how it goes, but anyways, at the end of it, it's like the Isis, which is Sirius B, adopts Anubis to her side for all time.
Hmm.
That's a symbol of Sirius C joining Sirius A and B, in which would some say it's around 300 something BC when the I can't remember the name of the guy but the calendar was revised once more to for the 365 and a quarter day. And then the Dogons, they have a symbol that's 366 symbols.
Hmm.
So it's the leap year day.
Right. Well, the Dogon also talk about this race, this amphibious race. Now, this is so interesting because a lot of the UFOs that they are reporting on, they're saying they're coming out of the water. They're hovering over the water. They're in the Gulf of Mexico. They're off the coast of California. So back, for the Dogon, they used to call these beings from Sirius, the Nomo, the monitors, which is very close to the Watchers, or the Anunnaki, right? And there was an interesting period, uh, where there was a quantum leap in technology, and they equate this with the arrival of these watchers or these nomos or these fish people, basically. So here in the Sirius Mystery, they said at a period approximately 3,400 years before Christ, a great change took place in Egypt and Sumer also. And the country passed rapidly from a state of advanced Neolithic culture with a complex tribal character to two well-organized monarchies. And now this is where we're also getting the idea of royal bloodlines and, like the ascension of kings. One comprising the Delta area and the other the Nile Valley proper. At the same time, the art of writing appears monumental, architecture and the arts and crafts developed to an astonishing degree, and all the evidence points to the existence of a well-organized and even luxurious civilization. All this was achieved within a comparatively short period of time, for there appears to be little or no background to these fundamental developments in writing and architecture. And this is also similar to the Masonic lore of, like, let's say, Tubal-Cain and these other
Yeah,
heroes who came and taught like metalworking and makeup and art and architecture. Um,
yeah, the artificers of fire.
right.
Yeah.
So here we've got the Dogon saying this, and then most mystery schools and even some religions, including Mormonism, who believe that life here was seeded by Dogon I mean not from the Nomo from Sirius, and they even know details that we didn't even know until like the 20th century, such as Sirius B, or they call it Poe, is a super dense um planet, right? It's like one of
Yeah.
the densest things in the universe. And so
Yeah.
the high culture of Egypt and Sumer seem to have appeared out of nowhere. They take this as evidence of visitation. And you will hear on social media, the tech nerds and stuff talk about something called the Fermi paradox. Have you heard of that?
Um,
No.
I haven't heard
Okay,
of
so
that.
that's just like this thought game that says that there are so many planets and suns in our Milky Way and in our universe that intelligent life has to uh, be out there because it would be impossible that we are alone
Yeah.
in the universe, right? So that's called the Fermi paradox.
Yeah. Well,
And well, I was just
uh,
going to say, Sirius B is made of what they call degenerate matter. And they believe we are in between a primitive society and a magical society right now. So magical meaning like super technologically advanced, or a race that is able to travel the stars.
yeah. So the Akhenaten, the that name, a lot of the pharaohs they had these names that were not their real names. They were bestowed titles of nobility. Akhenaten in Egyptian means the beneficiary of a ten, and a ten was one of the forms of Sirius, and that it's like these fish people may have been coming to them through a consciousness,
Mhm.
and that the because a lot of the like the theosophists, some of their stuff which they kind of steal from Buddhism and Mithraism, seven classes of consciousness for the seven major spheres, and that they're what they're doing is that they're saying that the theosophists, they're saying they're going to make a consciousness evolution for a new root race, quote unquote.
Mhm.
But their race isn't a race of ethnicities, it's a race of consciousness. And
Mhm.
so them bringing back to them, to the occultists, them putting the consciousness in the masses as a symbol of the rising of Atlantis slash the return of the Christ, quote unquote. And like the Christ is not the same as the Jesus that people are familiar with the New Testament,
Right.
and that they're the Christ is the quote unquote antichrist of the Christians.
Yeah. Exactly. And even Viva tweeted, "We are entering a golden age on January 20th." And it was interesting that when Trump won the election, Elmo posted Novus Ordo Seclorum.
Hmm.
Did you
Well,
see
I thought
that?
it was really spooky that this movie that came out, Megaopolis,
Uh-huh.
the movie there was a statue that fell that looked just like Trump or something, and then I posted a picture of it on Twitter. But the in the movie, the guy yells "Sic Semper Tyrannis," and I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh Jesus, they are that," because you know what that's from, right?
Well, that's what he yelled before they assassinated Lincoln, right?
Yeah,
It means death to tyrants.
yeah. So I think that the Marxists, the socialist communists, are programming the youth who are all brainwashed into this system because it's like the Luciferian slash Theosophists, they created socialism and communism of the
Hmm.
not the tiny mustache man and the communists, and that they even admit it in this occult the letters on occult meditation second volume. They state that the Bolshevism was part of the plan, that they created it, and it was a quote necessary evil,
Hmm.
and they're running a dualistic game on us where the masses are confounded by these opposing viewpoints, and if you enter into the dialect of these opposing viewpoints, you become part of this circular logic, which uh, basically divides us and conquers us.
And they actually say you will not go on into the future unless you are initiate of this new religion.
Yeah,
And so what we're talking about is like the UN, which is Theosophy, which is basically, Freemasonry and Kabbalah. We'll get into that in a second.
well,
But
Baha'ism.
yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about these Dogon, these creatures who are credited with founding the Sumerian civilization. So this isn't so far off of, like Christian ancient history when we have the Nephilim, right? And the daughters of men
Yeah,
cohabitating with beings from, well, basically fallen angels, the watchers, the monitors, or whatever. And some of them were aquatic. And even Carl Sagan talks about some fascinating creatures, he says, credited with founding the Sumerian civilization, which sprang up out of nowhere, as many Sumerian archaeologists will unhappily admit. They are described in a classical account by Alexander Polyhistor, who was a historian in 105 BC. They are amphibious. He says they were happier if they could go back to the sea at night and return to dry land in the daytime. All the accounts describe them as being semi-demons, personages or animals endowed with reason, but they are never called gods. They were superhuman in knowledge and length of life, and they eventually returned in a ship to the gods, carrying with them representatives of the fauna of Earth.
yeah. Well, so William Cooper talks about the Hebrew words Nephilim and Rephaim, and
Mhm. Oh,
he
that's the
states,
aquatic one, right? Rephaim?
well, I wouldn't get lost in the symbology, but he states that this is that they were people who were invoking these, they thought they were gods. They were practicing the secular humanism back then, where they were the mighty ones. And there's even a Jesus quote where he states, I don't remember the exact quote, but he states he asked them, he asked the people of Babylon, or not Babylon, but where he's at, he asked, "Ye are gods?" Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking because they think they're gods, and
Hmm.
like, there's quite a few instances of what is it, it's like the masses, the pagan belief system, if what they're doing is old, then they've been doing it for quite some time, controlling the masses through this hive mind ideology.
Hmm.
And it's like they've mastered nature, the symbols of nature of the human kind. That's why I was talking about that thing about Lucifer, the symbol, versus Pan,
Hmm.
where Lucifer is the thought, Pan is the desire, and
Hmm.
then the third part is the action, quote unquote. But
Hmm.
um the thought, this thought versus desire thing, this equilibrium seems to be what they call Satan. And that, so Satan in Hebrew means to contend, or you know
Adversary.
yeah, adversary. And then
Yeah.
what's interesting is that Israel in Hebrew means to contend with God. And
Hmm.
so it's very strange they would name a city after a phrase that basically is what's happening there right now.
Right.
Religion's contending.
So what you just said kind of reminded me, and reading this through of their rituals. So in Christianity and Orthodoxy, we have the liturgy, which is the same everywhere, all around the world, or very similar. We have this similar rituals of communion. And what that is also trying to create a sort of collective unconscious, a hive mind, a body with the mind of Christ or the heart of Christ, I should say. So it's what we're talking about is like a synthetic or an something that is set over against being in communion with Christ. This is being in communion with mermen from Sirius. And I actually found, so this reminded me of, do you remember that Beatles song, I Am the Eggman? I am the
Yeah,
walrus. I am the Eggman. Cuckoo, cuckoo. So they actually these some of these records of these fish people were preserved by Saint Photius, who was the I believe he was the librarian of Alexandria or Constantinople, one of those. But so he preserved these fragments talking about these fish people, recounting a story of a man named O or Ovanes, who came out of the Red Sea having a fish-like body, but the head, feet, and arms of a man, and taught astronomy and letters. Some accounts say that he came out of a great egg, whence his name, and that he was actually a man, but only seemed a fish because he was clothed in the skin of a sea creature. So this could also be talking about people with like, I don't know, scuba equipment or submarines or just like
yeah.
advanced technology that makes them look like they're aquatic, but they're actually not. What do you think?
Well, so with the Luciferians and the pantheists, so the Pan worshippers, they worship Pan through the exercise of the nature. And that's why the Bohemian Grove people are urinating on trees and getting prostitutes, whereas the Luciferians exercise Lucifer with the concealment of stories and trickery. And so they'll create, they'll purposely, they'll purposely proliferate superstition,
Hmm.
and that the Masons, like my friend went up to this Mason at the bar once, and he started asking him like, "Oh, do you guys worship the devil?" And he's like, "Oh, of course, blah blah blah." And so, like, they'll proliferate superstition to misguide the masses because they must keep their secrets secret,
Hmm.
and that their understanding of human nature is that's what they're worshiping, and that they may claim to have a star consciousness and all this stuff, but it's what it seems to be is because I can't actually prove that they have spirits or ghosts, or but what they do is very creepy, but it seems to be a psychological in nature, and that they're it's like they understand peer pressure and mass hypnosis to
Hmm. Hmm.
they fine-tuned it to get this group think going, and that they're their hierarchy, quote unquote, is what they're doing is they're claiming that they're manifesting their deity through the masses, and that the deity is gonna do an action through these masses, and that
Hmm.
these different these cults are eugenicists, and they're uh they create revolts. And so you got to remember, in ancient Babylon, Moloch was worshipped May 1st, the Astarte was May 1st, and that the communist socialist of May Day is May 1st.
Hmm.
And so they're gonna externalize the hierarchy, quote unquote, and they're gonna channel it through the masses to create some kind of chaos. And that oh, excuse me. And that these initiates are unaware of this. I've been exiled from podcasts because once for example, this lady was blatantly spewing the Luciferian philosophy, talking about Christ consciousness,
Hmm.
and I asked her a simple question. I asked her, "Where did you first hear of this Christ consciousness?" And she just she just totally she couldn't answer my question, even though she was a so-called expert.
Hmm.
And then so I had to ask it again, and I asked it again, and I asked it four times, and then finally she's like, "Well, it's all just words, blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And that's why the host exiled me because of that, and uh he couldn't. It's like when I speak out against this secular humanism, these people are just like, "That's not true. Oh, you're making it up," and it's like it's in the books. Like it's
Oh yeah. And if I know you, you come with receipts. I mean, you're always sending me screenshots of, texts that you've read that come from these people that you are talking about. It's not just hyperbole. You are going back into their seminal works and saying their own words back to them, and they have no idea what you're saying. So yeah, that's really frustrating.
yeah, they're very brainwashed.
Yeah, so they're, initiated into this hive mind consciousness from Sirius. And then so back to, ancient history, um, in addition to the existence of like the complex orbits of the three stars of Sirius, the Dogon also knew about other moons in our own solar system. They knew about the rings of Saturn, which they call the star of the limiting of the place. And they believed that Saturn cut us off from the rest of the Milky Way. Um, so I was
Yeah,
reading the end of this article in this book, The Dark Side of Freemasonry, and they were talking about that the Theosophists believe that the energy from Sirius comes to us and is disseminated through Saturn, and energy from the Pleiades comes to us and is disseminated through Venus. So there's a lot of planetary things going on. And the Dogon, this, super primitive tribe, knew all of these astronomical
yeah.
facts, right?
Well, so it's like Robert Hieronymus, one of my friends. I didn't realize he was on TV because I was looking up something the other day and found a History Channel clip of him on the History Channel. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. What the? But he mailed me his thesis on his doctorate thesis on the all-seeing or the Great Seal of the United States. But he says specifically, and I assumed he was a Mason, but I didn't. But in the video, he says that he's a member of co-Masonry, and that he says that and he coincides with what I've found is that the Sirius is the son of the sun, and to the Luciferians the
Mhm.
Sirius energy of Lucifer goes through the sun to the initiate. Meanwhile, the other force, the other nature, goes through the planet Saturn,
Mhm.
which is that's the Pan force, because Saturn
Oh,
is,
okay.
yeah, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn,
Right.
and that there seems to be this that's what they're talking about when they're talking about this balance of Pan versus Lucifer. And then the symbolism, the Ankh, the tree is also the hammer, which is the symbol of the artificers of fire, or Cain or Pan, and then
Hmm.
the Ouroboros is Lucifer. And that I found this very strange, well, it's not strange, but it's a biblical inscription. I think it's in Greece or something, but it's got a picture of a red bull, which would
Hmm.
be Pan, and then it's got the Ouroboros, but it was referring to it as the Leviathan,
Hmm.
and that so Pan would be the Abaddon, and the Ouroboros would be Lucifer,
Hmm.
or wait, the Leviathan, sorry. And then it's got above it, it's got a griffin, which I thought was very interesting. I haven't
Hmm.
deciphered what that symbol means. I'm assuming that symbol is the symbol of action.
Hmm. Here is the old Dogon symbol for Sirius. I don't know if you could see that.
Yeah,
It's just like a big egg with this little glyph right here, right?
yeah, yeah. They show that on the Leonard Nimoy In Search of episode as well. They had a symbol for Jupiter with four dots, which would be the four moons.
So, in addition to knowing things that nobody could know, because they were taught it in, my opinion, by the Watchers or the Monitors or the Fallen, They also knew things like the circulation of blood, the oxygenation of blood, which they also likened to the orbits of planets. They knew that Earth turned on its axis. And then in Egypt, their creator god, Amma, seeded life over the universe.
Yeah. Another
And they
name,
said,
I'm
Amma
pretty
gave
sure
the
it's
world its shape and its movement and created living creatures, these creatures living on other Earths as well as on our own. This proliferation of life is illustrated by an explanation of the myth in which it is said man is on the fourth Earth, but on the third there are men with horns, on the fifth, men with tails, on the sixth, men with wings. Um, and the men with wings from the sixth Earth, they emphasize the ignorance of what life is on other worlds, but also the certainty that exists. So what they're describing kind of sounds like Egyptian gods, who are a lot of them are half man, half animal.
yeah. Well, I mean that the I think a lot of it is antique zodiacal symbolism.
Uh-huh.
Like the
Zodiac.
well, it's interesting because the Christians were they have this concept of the mark of the beast, and so it's like if you believe in the zodiac, that's like the doorway into secular humanism because you're saying you believe in fate and that the it's like beast in Greek is zodion, and
Mm.
that so it's like the ancients they spoke in remember that because they lacked adjectives, they spoke in terms that would seem supernatural, but sometimes it was simply about the zodiac and the symbolisms of the planetary forces. Because to them it was like an ancient science, but to the
Mhm.
profane it becomes this supernatural thing. And that the I mean, it's hard to explain because I've seen UFOs before. I have no idea what they were or anything, and I can't prove that there was anything from another planet inside of it. But like, it's like we do have to keep an open mind in case of the possibility of, because if there is some sort of extraterrestrial biological entity, then we're in deep doo-doo here.
Yeah, and it could be lots of things, it could be a psyop, it could be a demonic invasion, it could be real, it could be fake. So we just kind of have to use our discernment as things are disclosed. And then we have these documentaries that came out. What was it called? It's right on the tip of my mind. It was about how they use people to disclose misinformation when they think that they are getting documents from generals and stuff, and they're just some kind of patsy to muddy the waters. Mirage Men. So if you're looking for more information about how all these UFO guys get their information, you need to go watch that documentary called Mirage Men. So back
Yeah,
to, huh?
the cults do the same thing where they'll find a true believer and then they'll use that person as their spokesman
Hmm.
because the people that are under the group think have the psychic impression that the person telling them something is true because they believe it.
Hmm. So we've got these Nomo, the collective name for the great founders of civilization, according to the mystery schools. And they're from Sirius and they're amphibians. And the Sirius system is also known as Land of the Fish. And they are told that the Nomo will come again. And then, like you said, going to Egypt, Egyptian and Greek, the star Sirius is known as Sophis, right?
Yeah,
Which is Isis. And their entire calendar and all of their high rituals of their religions are based around the how do you say this?
yeah.
Heliacal
So
rising of Sirius, right? And so
yeah,
it was so important to the Egyptians and to the Dogon, it says in Sirius Mystery that gigantic temples were constructed with their main aisles oriented precisely towards the spot on the horizon where Sirius would appear on the expected morning. The light of Sirius would be channeled along the corridor due to the precise orientation to flood the altar in the inner sanctum as if a pinpointed spotlight had been switched on. This blast of light focused from a single star was possible because of the orientation being so incredibly precise and because the temple would otherwise be in total darkness within. In a huge, utterly dark temple, the light of one star focused solely on the altar must have made quite an impact on those present. In this way was the presence of the star made manifest within its temple. One such temple to the star Sirius was the temple of Isis at Dendera in Egypt. An ancient hieroglyphic inscription from the temple informs us that she shines into her temple on New Year's Day and she mingles her light with that of the Father Ra on the horizon.
Yeah, there's have you ever heard of the Lion's Gate portal?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's August 8th. A lot of the temples are pointed at Sirius for the because they think it's at that point it's the closest.
Uh-huh.
I do have this from page 58 of Arcana of Freemasonry by a church ward. The origin of the blazing star was Egyptian Sothos and is shown in zoo-type form as Anubis, who guided the souls through the underworld. And its illusion as the star which guided the wise men is a recent version of the old. In another form, the bright morning star, the star with 8 rays, it represents Horus of the resurrection. And it was typified by Orion, the eightfold one, the highest of the seven, with the essence of those to make one. The one, therefore, eight like a Ennead, the revelation of the Son of God promises to the morning star to him that overcometh, as I have also received of my. Well, I guess I'm gonna skip that part. But so the it's interesting about the Ennead because that is the symbol of the New Age religion. That it's a nine-pointed star with the, and then the ninth star is the repeating of the star again,
Hmm.
and that the it seems as though they're openly worshiping the Ennead and the it's like how Cooper says he talks about Darwin's theory and he brings it to the point that Darwin was preaching uh alchemy to the masses and that the two mothers, the water and the matter, and that the it's insane because then you bring it to other scientific things that we call science, quote unquote, like in the symbolism of like per se Isaac Newton and the apple falling on his head, the
Hmm.
apple, the symbol of the fruit of the tree, or
Hmm.
the periodical table is to the Egyptians, the Ennead equated also to the number 81, 9 times 9, and
Hmm.
that the periodical table had 91 stable elements.
Hmm.
Uh, but it seems as though that they're putting like for the Big Bang, for example, like they believe Sirius is the center of the universe and that their symbol is uh also the Shemesh symbol, the outer circle being the sun, the inner dot being Sirius. And so
Right.
I would assume that Albert Einstein based his Big Bang theory or whatever on simply this old belief system that they think
Interesting.
that Sirius was the center of the universe. So they're weaving their religion into the science.
Uh-huh.
With,
Do you think they're making their religion the center of the universe?
well, they're. What do you mean by that?
Uh, well, I don't know. How would you be able to tell if Sirius was the center of the universe or not? But do you think that they are claiming that
Oh
for?
yeah, they're definitely. That's why they. That's why they. This whole one thing. It's like their raising of Atlantis, quote unquote, is the
Mm.
same symbol as Horus the conquering child,
Hmm.
Eon of Horus, and that
Right.
to them the flood of the Old Testament is a symbol of the masses and the drowning of the Aryan consciousness, quote unquote.
Mm.
Because remember in the I don't remember what page it is, but they start talking about Aryan crap and that so their symbolism is of the Aryan stuff is this that's the symbol of the Sirius consciousness. And I think the tiny mustache man, because he was a theosophist, that he
Mhm.
got a hold of this stuff, didn't understand that it was about consciousnesses, not races. And
Oh.
then and then the eugenics happened. But I do think that it was possibly all planned by these secret societies who are masters of eugenics.
Mhm.
I mean, look at Mao in China, 50
Yeah.
million people.
So this is where you get the idea of, like you said, the dog days of summer, the Lion's Gate, when Sirius is very close, and it's very hot outside, and the Nile would flood, and so all of these rituals and venerations to Sirius also coincided with nature, right? Like acts of
Yeah,
nature. And even the another tribe in Mali, who are cousins of the Dogon, they describe Sirius B as the eye star. So this is where you get the all-seeing eye, the watcher, the eye of Horus, um, is all connected to Sirius. And do you remember that Alan Parsons Project song?
yeah,
I am the eye in the sky looking
yeah,
for you. So the intro to that song is actually called Sirius. So these people know um, a little bit about, ceremonial magic. And so talking about magic, this goes into also Neoplatonism and the Trismegistic writings of Hermes,
yeah. The first incarnation of Sirius.
yeah, who
The
started in Egypt. So the Trismegistic writings are fragmentary and consist of a large amount of exceedingly strange sermons, dialogues, and excerpts um, about magic and Sirius and Isis.
yeah,
And there's a book called Virgin of the World, which is the sayings of Isis to Horus. And the Virgin of the World is a Trismegistic treatise in the form of a dialogue between the Hierophant as spokesman for Isis and the neophyte who represents Horus. Thus, the priest instructing the initiate is portrayed as Isis instructing her son. Throughout a strong emphasis on the hierarchical principle of lower and higher beings in the universe. So, this is what you're talking about, the hierarchy, right? That earthly mortals are presided over at intervals by other higher beings who interfere in Earth's affairs when things become hopeless. And this is exactly what, if you log on TikTok, the last couple days of TikTok, it's all about people channeling messages from aliens and the arrivals and how they're already here, but they have cloaked themselves so we don't freak out and attack them and hurt ourselves in the process. So, alien. 2025 is upon us for sure.
oh
And
yeah,
it's all laid out here in the Sirius Mystery. So, in The Virgin of the World, that book about Isis, it describes a person called Hermes who seems to represent a race of beings who taught earthly mankind the arts of civilization. After which it says, and thus the charge unto his kinsmen of the gods to keep sure watch he mounted to the stars. So, according to this treatise, mankind has or have been a troublesome lot requiring scrutiny and at rare intervals of crisis intervention. So,
yeah. Well, you've heard of the language of the birds, I'm sure, right? It's the same as the Masonic green language.
no, what is that?
Well, that's why I wanted to get that book, Fulcanelli Mysteries of the Cathedral.
Oh, uh-huh.
So Thoth was an ibis scribe bird, and that the planet Mercury, and that the it's like when the Egyptians, all of their alchemy is based off from very primitive things, such as the birds migrating north and south, and that that's why it was called the language of the birds. But so to them, there were three incarnations of Sirius, one being Mercury, the second one being Scorpio, and that this relates the Osiris story in the physical form because you'll see the obelisks with the scorpions at the base,
Hmm.
and that the symbolism is that to ancient man the universe was in the shape of a man, and
Mm.
that each zodiac sign was assigned to a particular part of his body, and that the
That's in
Scorpio,
Kabbalah too.
yeah, and the Scorpio is assigned to the crotch area, and that the excuse me, to the to the Masons and stuff, there's a thing about the keystone and the this alludes back to the Fisher King and the castration cults, but because they misunderstood the astronomy and stuff, so the stone, according to them, moved from Scorpio to Aries, and that was a symbol of them conquering the animal passions, quote unquote.
Hmm.
And so that's where the castration comes in, and that the Fisher King, there's lore of, see, they spun it into a weird thing where there was a story of the head of John the Baptist, and there was two orbs next to his head on the platter, and that it was a symbolism of the castration to the dark side of the Templars, because there was also a non-dark. There seems to be like three or four different Templar groups. One being originally Scottish, the others mixed with an India Lotus cult, which eventually turned to the Rosicrucians. And
Hmm.
then the other being the Hashashim cults of the Roshinia and the Assassins,
Hmm.
which created the Islam religion. And that, what is the there's, but yeah, the damn it, I was going to say something else, but I forget.
Uh, that's okay. So let's go back to Isis and the Virgin of the World real quick. And that also talks about the black rite or the dark mystery, which here in Sirius Mystery they're saying the Masonic mysteries, which are hopefully garbled and watered down versions of genuine mysteries of earlier times. He's talking about Egypt. And there is something called the black rite, which
Yeah.
is connected to the Black Osiris as the highest degree of secret initiation possible in the ancient Egyptian religion. It is the ultimate secret of the mystery of Isis. The treaty says Hermes came to Earth to teach men civilization and then again mounted to the stars, going back to his home and leaving behind the mystery religion of Egypt, which became the priesthood of Thoth. That's why Hermes and Thoth go together. Um, and its celestial secrets were someday to be decoded. So he's saying there's evidence that the Black Rite did deal with the astronomical matters, hence the Black Rite concerned Osiris, Isis, and the evidence mounts it may have concerned the existence of Sirius B. And this all gets into atomic physics.
There's something strange with the occultists and uh the idea of them burning their enemies and using the term Holocaust in Japan.
Hmm.
Uh I speculate because Ralph Epperson points out that Nagasaki and Hiroshima were both the only two Catholic cities in Japan, and that the idea of the ancient sacrificial goat sacrificed to Azazel. If you notice the Order of the Solar Temple
Hmm.
from the 90s, they used the sigil of Azazel. They were a serious star cult, and they were all found executed to the back of the head, and that both their temples were burned down simultaneously in both Canada and Switzerland. And so to the occultists, it seems as though some of these other groups are sacrificial lambs to them, and that they're literally sacrificing people, and that this ideology goes back to the Old Testament with the two goats, where one was wearing a white string and the other a red,
Hmm.
and that the red one was sent out to the desert to feed Azazel,
Hmm.
whereas the white one, and that, so the initiates, they harbor this ideology, and that uh it's very very strange because it seems to go back to more of an Aramaic thing rather than Egyptian.
Hmm.
uh
Well, the Heaven's Gate cult also thought they were going to catch a ride on a comet to Sirius. And that's
yeah, the
what,
Hail Bob.
yeah, that's when they unalived themselves. And then it's interesting that the oldest form of the name of Osiris is a hieroglyph of a throne and an eye. And again, we were just talking about how Sirius B is the eye star or the eye in the sky. And there's a picture of who is a Sumerian, Assyrian Ovanes. He stands before the stone, um, and he's wearing like his fish. Can you see that?
Yeah, the you can see underneath the eye
Uh-huh.
below the wings is the tree,
Yeah.
and the that's why the in the Old Testament it says the snake was on the tree
Hmm.
and the fruit of the knowledge. It's crazy how it all goes back to this Old Testament stuff and how the symbolism is it's so in your face, but it's so uh it's hard to get to in a way. Like that thing about the Ankh and the being equating to the balance symbol and the because the Mason book has the balance symbol right on it, the square and the compass, and the to witchcraft the compass was the dagger and the square was the oh, I can't remember what the square was, but the so those tools, quote unquote, that's why I was bringing up the tarot cards with the four symbols of the hands and the Mormons, how the hands come out of the sheet, the holes in the wall or whatever, and
Hmm.
so those are the quote tools of the god, because remember their god is the star Sirius, and to them
Hmm.
the star Sirius has tools, quote unquote, because it's the great it has to do with the Solomon story and the molten sea.
Hmm.
Uh, and that Hiram Abiff was a symbol of Osiris, and the molten sea was the mixing of the philosophy of water and fire,
Hmm.
the same symbol as the two alchemical pillars. In the Old Testament, it's symbolized by Cain versus Abel.
Hmm.
That the to the Masons that uh Cain was born of a different uh thing than Abel,
Hmm.
and that the damn, how does that go? The but the it's like I wonder if I mean this is kind of jumping gears here, but it's like I wonder if they had built the pyramids not because of the cooperation of mankind, but because of the brainwashing of mankind.
Yeah. I that makes me think of, Tower of Babel, the trying to reach God. Now, I don't think they were like dumb enough to think that they could actually build a physical building tall enough to get to God, but the building represented a gateway to the spirit world, right? Or a crossroads.
Well, Babel in Hebrew means to confound,
Hmm.
and well, Cooper says that it was he's got a lot of stuff to back it up, but I can't remember all of it. But he says that it was when mankind could read symbolism, and then they lost the second sight. And the Masons are known for having a second sight, and they always quote the Revelations where it says eyes to see and ears to hear,
Hmm.
and that the non-illuminist Masons believed that uh basically Jesus was a Mason, and that the symbolisms was passed down through that's why I was getting into that Abaddon Leviathan thing, because it seems as though they were recognizing the symbols of the occult, and
Hmm.
that they seen the power it had over the masses,
Hmm.
and that it reminds me of that story of John the Baptist, how he's like in the wilderness, and then and then he's just trying to live a simple life, and then they force him to come to the city, and then I mean I'm kind of going off topic here, but then he talks to the king, and the king kind of likes him, but then the queen is like off with his head.
Hmm.
But
Well,
it's interesting because in the story John is it says that the angel that came to Mary was the same angel that went to John's mother, and John's mother was also barren of she couldn't have children.
hmm.
And that so it's very interesting because it's like a second immaculate conception,
Hmm.
and that people speculate about who Didymus was. and that there's an argument about Didymus, but I would assume Didymus is John, and that because he's a twin because the angel went to his mother as well.
Oh, uh-huh.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Um, so just wrapping up whatever was left in the Sirius Mystery. So this book actually goes deep into how the Epic of Gilgamesh and the t Greek tale of Jason and the Argonauts is very, very similar. Um, Anubis is Hermes and Mercury. The aquatic people they talk about well they actually mention Dagon in the Bible. So to the Philistines he's called Dagon, to the Babylonians he's called Ovanes, to the Sumerians he's called Enki. um, and the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph for goddess also means serpent, and Sirius actually means the tooth of the serpent, and that kind of reminded me of that the cosmic egg, that old magic
Yeah,
woodcut with the egg and the serpent wrapping around it. So there's
yeah,
definitely some fishiness going on, some reptilian stuff from Sirius. And the mystery schools, I mean, they all call it the sun behind the sun. And like we were talking about before, the true source of the sun's potency. So, like the sun keeps the earth alive, Sirius keeps the spirit world alive. And even I read a article today talking about how in the Quran, Allah claims he is the Lord of Sirius.
yeah. The well, so Sirius, that serpent thing, the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and evil was, the serpent on the tree was the symbol of Sirius, and the giving of the consciousness according to the mystery schools, and that the it's interesting because this whole, because I don't believe in fate, and that this idea that a star consciousness is possibly controlling large groups of people,
Hmm.
and that that masses and masses of people proclaim to have no religion but yet believe in the Zodiac,
Hmm.
and that it seems as though ancient systems are at play in modern times. I mean, that's a little contradictory to what I was saying about psychology and stuff, but see, I'm not sure if these Illuminists had uh, figured out what the mystery of it all and the control of mankind, and that because that's what all of Masonry is about. Uh, some say it's about the perfection of man, quote unquote, but it's about the control.
Hmm. Yeah,
Excuse, and
exactly.
that because Weishaupt went to Egypt for 5 years,
Right.
and then he comes back, and then he creates a new Egyptian craft, and
Hmm.
uh,
Well, speaking of Illuminati, I wanted to tell you and everybody else about something that I had heard of a long time ago, and I never like deep dive into it, but yesterday I did, and it's the Freemasonic inauguration ritual. Have you heard of that?
are you talking about the
When a new
like the
president,
presidential?
yeah. So, okay, rewind for a second. You have heard of Tragedy and Hope, right? Carol Quigley. So, Jay has done a really good series of lectures on the entire book of Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley, who actually talks about rings within rings of these secret societies. And the inner group has no name, so that's like the smallest. And then there's the Society of the Elect, the Round Table groups, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Council of Foreign Relations, Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, and the OTO. And then you have a high adept Freemasonry in these rings within rings. And people think that these campaigning buzzwords were made up by the candidate, but they're not. They're actually like, do you remember when Obama was getting elected and they would have these big posters and all it would say would be like hope or change or just like
Yeah,
one ambiguous statement and everyone's like, yes, we want change, we have hope. Um, and now the new buzzwords are like drain the swamp, right? You've heard that one.
yeah.
You've heard build the
Well,
wall. Make
Yeah.
America Great. Okay, these all come from algorithms from Cambridge Analytica, which creates the buzzwords and feed them to the candidates.
Yeah. Well, I did want to add that Obama, I don't pronounce his name properly because he's a socialist,
Mhm.
but so he's also a Mason. But so when he was inaugurated, he refused to put his hand on the Bible 3 times.
I remember
And
that.
then he also refused to put his hand on his heart. He put it on the other side.
Hmm.
And that, so I would assume that he is an illuminist, and that he was also, you remember the Newsweek 2008 inauguration article where it showed his hand with the Masonic ring,
Hmm.
and then he was also endorsed by the Masons,
Hmm.
and that I thought it was very interesting how Kamala had gotten caught. Her secretary or her assistant had been caught with a Masonic police force,
Hmm.
and that the case was dropped or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that, because I've speculated about, because I know that there's Masonic passports, and I've speculated that there were Masonic courts
Hmm.
that were outside of excuse me, but the idea that see, because it's a secret society.
Yeah.
And so why would a society have a passport that's different than ours? And that I believe that they're operating under, because Cooper brings up laws that in certain states where say you were a Mason and you were being chased by the police and you ran in the Masonic temple, they couldn't go into the temple and get you.
Hmm.
So there's obviously a sovereign jurisdiction there.
Yes. Because masonry supersedes everything, your family, your church, your country. It goes across all boundaries and borders, right?
Yeah. But
And
what's weird though is that the phrase fellow traveler.
uh-huh.
Well, some say that, well, the esoteric means that they're having out of body experiences.
Mm.
So they're claiming, so the lodge to them is a symbol of the star Sirius. So when
Hmm.
they go into the lodge, they're on Sirius
Right.
according to their religion. And that it's there's something very it's very witchcrafty. I don't know if you got to that section of the
Oh
book.
yeah, we're gonna talk about that in the third part, but I just wanted to get past this the Freemasonic inauguration ritual, which is called Osiris Risen. Now, if you guys want an entire stream on this, it's called Jim Duke Perspective, January 17, 2021, Freemasonic Freemason Inauguration Ritual. That's the name of it on Spreaker. And he talks about how simultaneously, during the inauguration, there is a Freemasonic ritual to induct the candidate into Freemasonry as the incarnation of Osiris. So I guess the president does not take part in this. It's somebody, it's a 33rd degree person playing him. But this all goes back to the ideas of like the Rosicrucian New Atlantis, the Secret Destiny of America, Francis Bacon. I did a whole stream on Secret Destiny of America on my Rockfin, so if you guys are interested in that. This is a Masonic country, and the capital is the headquarters of the World Masonic Lodge. And what we are right now is a Judeo-Christian Masonic corporation. And I also did a show about the secret architecture of our nation's capital on Rockfin, so check that out. But this gets into, Babylon, Egypt, Greek, Roman, Kabbalah, Hermetic alchemy. This is everything rolled into one makes the Corporation of America. And they actually think, according to, Albert Pike, that some people deserve to be misled. And the capital is referred to as the temple, the Masonic temple, and then the raising ceremony. Now this happens when the inauguration, this is going to happen in what, 2 days, 3 days on the 20th, right? So the raising ceremony is conducted in the temple room of the third floor of the Capitol. It is a 33rd degree only Scottish Rite secret, and through Rosicrucian magic, it holds that the spirit of Osiris can be raised from the underworld and installed in the reigning president. And this also has to do with the Washington Monument. Now, I didn't know if you all knew this, but the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph for Sirius is an obelisk, which is just like the Washington Monument, a dome, and a pentagram. And look at this. This is some kind of hat that the Dogon wear. What does that look like during their rituals?
Yeah. Well, there's also the symbol of Sirius in the elevator above the elevator door in the obelisk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there
Yeah.
seems to be three types of masonry. One is is backboned by Kabbalism. The second has no Kabbalism. The third is Kabbalism mixed with the hierarchy, and that
Mm-hmm.
Albert Pike discusses this. But the one that when I talk about the ancient rites that aren't Illuminists, they're the ones that didn't have Kabbalism and Freemasonry. And so many of the people on podcasts have get very upset when I say there was Freemasonry that didn't have Kabbalism, and that
Right.
I've shown it in the books, and that they still don't want to
Well,
swallow it. But the
Kabbalism isn't that ancient. I mean, as we know it now, it was a very like what the 17th century Spain.
well, that symbol that you showed with the from Babylon, that tree is the Kabbalistic tree in its precursor form.
Uh-huh.
And then it has to do with Osiris in the tree form, which, according to the mystery schools, was the symbol of the Bible on the altar, or
Hmm.
the holy book on the altar, because the holy book was the acacia tree. Um, it's it does sort of relate to Druidism, but it seems as though there's also multiple forms of Druidism, where one was the Roman form and the mainland form, where the Irish form seemed to be different in that it had a precursor name, which I can't remember the full name, but it's somewhat irrelevant. But it's interesting because their religion, the serpent egg, had in the what is it, the willow tree, certain types of things, quote unquote, had the phosphor energy.
Hmm.
You know, that's why the Egyptians like the cats, because when they pet them in the dark, it would create sparks.
Oh, uh-huh.
But
So
but
yeah, this energy and the Washington Monument is obviously in an obelisk, which is a phallus, which is Osiris's missing phallus, right?
yeah, the generative force symbol.
Yeah. And so they think that through the Washington Monument, the seed of Osiris would transmit upwards out of the underworld through the base of the Washington Monument, which uh, symbolizes his testes. And he magically, um, Ejaculates. I don't know if I could say that on YouTube or not, but you know what I'm talking about. He magically does that into the womb of the dome of Isis reincarnated, which the dome is the capital dome, reincarnated as Horus. And this is as pharaohs would do in ancient times to ensure um, Horus coming through in the temple of Amun-Ra. And then last point on this is to make sure that the arrival of Apollo or Osiris, now, if you go into the Temple of the 33rd in Washington, D.C., where Albert Pike is buried, right?
Yeah.
There is a giant disc right there in the lobby. It's like the first thing you see, a blazing face with sun rays, and they say this is Apollo. So to make sure Apollo or Apollyon from Revelation can do his thing, they say a Bible is placed in a binding ritual at the base of the Washington Monument. Now, there's also a documentary about this called Belly of the Beast, and if you want to know more about the inauguration ritual that may or may not take place in a couple days. Like I said, you can look into the work of Tom Horn. You can look at that documentary Belly of the Beast, or you can listen to that podcast by Jim Duke Perspective called Freemason Inauguration Ritual. Weird, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would certain people get lost in the superstition, and I would be careful of everyone basically, whereas because it's like the occult orders, they specialize in getting your goat, quote unquote,
Hmm.
and that they are masters of deception, because their god is the deceiver, the great deceiver, Lucifer, quote unquote. And that when Mercury is what Mercury is one of the incarnations in the Egyptian story, Mercury was the great trickster.
Hmm.
uh that this the entire the psychology of people is see what I call the New World Order and the Illuminati. Their symptoms are they don't want any individual rights. They don't want any property rights. They want people to go back to serfdom, and that like the founding fathers of America were the opposite, where Thomas Paine was a member of the Illuminati, but then he went against it. And then so they wanted individual rights. They didn't want this group think stuff. They wanted freedom of religion. And that the New World Order and the Illuminati, they want one religion. And they say specifically in the quotes in Dark Side of Freemasonry that they're going to cycle out, or no, it was, yeah, it's in there too. But it's also in that occult letters of meditation or whatever by that 12 dude. And that they say they're going to cycle out the quote unquote five root races, which to them is the five previous consciousnesses, aka religions. And so any religion that is believing in a god, they're gonna get rid of it. They're gonna cycle it out. And that to them, it's because what they're doing in these what they're doing is they're practicing alchemy, and that the initiate must believe in a god, so then they can transmutate his belief into him believing he is a god.
Hmm.
And that that's all this that's what the symbol of lead into gold is. Lead, that's why they call the occultists call the Christians the Black Lodge, because it's the
Yes.
symbol of lead to them and the worship of Saturn or the material plane. And then the lead is turned into gold, or and it's all just symbolism. And it's so, oh, they're so good at like speaking in a way to mislead.
Hmm.
And that like even myself, I was reading this quote by one of these Masons, and it was talking about, I thought the first few times I read this part of this book, I was like, oh, they're talking about rebuilding a building from landmarks. And that, but I didn't realize that they were talking in metaphors, and that the building is not a building, it's the return of a doctrine. And that the
Hmm.
landmarks are symbols of being able to proof a symbol, basically, where like how that Hebrew phrase, which basically meant barking dog, it was a symbol of Sirius, and also Anubis was Sirius, and therefore the Hebrew phrase was obviously speaking about Anubis metaphorically.
Hmm. Well, in Masonry, Sirius is known as the blazing star, right? So you have a pentagram with some kind of fire behind it. I don't have a picture of the blazing star. Maybe you can pull that up on your phone if you want to. But yeah, it's just basically a pentagram with the fire behind it, the sun behind the sun. They say that Sirius is the first and most exalted object in the lodge, and the goal of Masonry is to establish a holy Masonic empire and
Yeah,
one world government ruled by Masonic princes. Now, this book talks about the what they call her the New Age Queen, Alice Bailey, and it says the key part of the plan calls for establishing a new world religion which is to be based on the mystery religions of ancient Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Rome, and other pagan nations of the past. Alice Bailey explains the origin and significance. They say these ancient mysteries were originally given to humanity by the hierarchy and were in their turn received by the hierarchy from the Great White Lodge on Sirius. They contain the clue to the evolutionary process hidden in number and words. They veil the secret of man's origin and destiny.
yeah, yeah. So here you'll see the seven pointed star with Wait, no, sorry, that's the wrong picture. Um, darn it. Well, so I was showing this while you were reading.
Oh, okay.
This is the a Baha'i necklace. Can
Uh-huh.
you see it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a three interlaced triangles. And then this is my profile picture on Twitter, which is the
Mm-hmm.
33rd degree symbol with three interlaced triangles, which is the same as the Baha'ism.
Mm-hmm.
And that the let's see here.
But here's one ancient Masonic depiction of the blazing star right
Yeah,
here.
notice it's got nine stars around it,
Uh-huh.
just like the Baha'i symbol.
Here's a golden one. Here is one with the eye in it. I am the eye in the sky, looking at
Yeah. So
you.
like it's that's what I wanted to get to about the reverse side of the Great Seal. Um, where so in Robert Hieronymus's book, which is a doctorate thesis on which that's how he got his doctorate on humanism. It was about at one point, so Thomas Jefferson, they were making the Great Seal of the United States, which was the Phoenix, and that the reverse side, which was the all-seeing eye, was never shown to the founding fathers, and that a mysterious man in a dark cloak, he had brought the seal to Thomas Jefferson, who was a current Illuminati member, and that the seal was not to be revealed until I believe it was 250 years,
Mm.
and that in 1916 the Rosicrucian Society released a book called the 68th Convocation of the Rosicrucian Order, which I'm sure you've probably heard of or read, and that that they talk specifically about the Great Seal. But the Great Seal, the circle with the triangle with the eye, that is the symbol to the Masons of the Tetragrammaton, and that the eye being Sirius, the triangle being Saturn, and the circle being the sun. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's at first, 15 years ago, I thought it was an alignment, but I didn't realize it was a double path symbol where one path is through Sirius, the other path is through Saturn.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, and
because in Kabbalah, you got your two pillars, you've got your in magic, you have your left-hand path and your right-hand path, so that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
So in this book, they say in Greek and Roman religion, some important secret cults, although the mystic rites were kept secret, it is known that they required elaborate initiations, including accepting occult knowledge and acting out sacred drama. So I talk about this all the time in my live talk, how we get where does the stage acting come from and film after that. So the sacred drama, since the mystery deities were associated primarily with fertility, many scholars believe that these cults were based on unrecorded primitive fertility rites. Now I'm gonna go back again because I know some of you guys are gonna be mad at me, but I always see weird people tweeting about birth rates and they're freaking out about birth rates. And yes, that is an issue, but the solution to that is not to become a weird ass fertility cult, right?
yeah. Well,
Um,
they've always got the masses believing in something literally, and then it's all symbolism,
mhm.
you know.
So it says, of course, Satan's true goal regarding what Bailey has hinted at as man's destiny is to enslave him in his one world religion and his visible or externalized kingdom on earth, which will restore mankind to these mysteries, including their sacred drama. So they're not, and they're so sneaky, and they're already. I gotta choose my words wisely. They're very sinister in how they get people to switch up uh, teams and thinking this team is the righteous people and this team is the bad people, and it's all of the same people. If you can explain to me what Bohemian Grove is about, then I will listen to you about politics. But if you don't know about Masonry and Sirius and mystery schools, then you don't know what you're even voting for. So, returning to the mystery school.
What page are you in?
I'm on page 48 of The Dark Side of Freemasonry. So, the return to the mystery school is the worship of the sun, moon, and stars, and the generative principle, which is the G inside of the compass and square. So,
Yeah.
they're going to make it look Christian, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the Antichrist is it's going to be instead of Christ, you have dot dot dot. You have Barabbas or you have whoever your idol is that's walking this earth. Um,
The Christ consciousness. That's
Christ
what.
consciousness, exactly. And so the sun, moon, and stars is, Isis, Osiris, like we were talking about, and then the
Yeah.
generative principle. Every
Well,
Masonic, yes.
that's why they want people to believe in the Zodiac, because it's the worship of the sun and stars. Sorry, I
Right.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, that's okay, but they want you to worship fertility instead of putting it in its proper like category that we don't do all of this just to produce. I don't want to get off
Yeah.
topic, but anyways, so their universal religion um makes every Mason a brother bound together under an imperative obligation of a contract, like we were talking about before. It supersedes your country, your religion, your family, your children, anything. A Mason, and your duty as a Mason is above that. And these people who have been initiated are called the children of light, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because so the initiates are Horus, quote unquote. The full body of initiates is Horus. The temple is the Isis. The doctrine is Osiris,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it's the Eon of Horus, the conquering child. Because if you go to page 83, um, the today in our Aryan race, humanity, they're talking about the Sirius race, humanity is now ready for a further revelation. He can be permitted to take the sublime degree of Master Mason and receive the Master's word for which he so long has sought. And the word is the symbol of the fruit of the garden. All this racial history is indicated in the work of the 3 degrees of the Blue Lodge, in the rhythm of the threefold work of the past, present, and future lies revealed.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're talking about it's interesting because psychologically it's like they get someone to believe in something from the past, which is the mystery schools of the past. Then
Mm-hmm.
they believe in something in the future, which is the quote unquote return of the Christ, which
Or the
is
new
the
Atlantis, yeah.
the Atlantis, the same symbol. And then the present would be the initiate believing they are channeling the force. And
Right.
yeah, and so there it reminds me of that Back to the Future movie where it's like the whole time they have you concentrating on the past, the present, and the future, and Doc Brown symbolizing Zeus, and Zeus who always in the mythology would divide people into two.
Mm.
And that it's interesting because the whole movie there's always two people in
Mm-hmm.
that it seems as though the whole movie is esoteric, and that it was weird because I was watching this silly documentary that I think I sent you, but I don't know if you've seen it yet. But it was all about Back to the Future, and then I'm like, I'm gonna apply this ideology to the movie Teen Wolf, and and everything, the same rules seem to apply. Where at the beginning there's a big white orb, which would be the symbol of Sirius, and then Michael J. Fox's head appears in front of it, and then all of a sudden he's wearing a yellow shirt with the
Mm-hmm.
number 42, 42 for Saturn, and that
That's
this
also the proposition Euclid, right?
yeah, and that the it's like him being the wolf is the symbol of, because in China Sirius is a wolf, many cultures the wolf is Sirius,
Hmm.
but him being a werewolf is a symbol of him invoking the Sirius consciousness, and all of a sudden he's
Oh.
really cool.
Uh-huh.
So the Masons, whoever made that movie, they're just laughing at us, like, "Oh, look at how cool you are if you invoke the Sirius consciousness."
Well,
The
that's interesting because he's a man and a wolf, And this book talks about the two separate interdependent orders, the outer masonry and the inner one visible, one invisible. And they call the invisible one the mysterious arcanum arcanorum and
Yeah.
equate this with the magic of Kabbalah, which they call the godmother of all religions. That's what Albert Pike says.
Yeah. Well, Pike, he was more of a student. Half of his book is quotes by Eliphas Levi.
Oh, right.
But where was that one? So it's like they're it's like symbolically they are the Nephilim. They
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
um and they want to bring back the old gods. And that's why you see all these repeating tower people who are repeating all the old religions and getting people into the passion plays of the
Yes.
antiquity.
And saying we are the new Rome and posting themselves in Roman centurion, putting their name as Roman on social media. I don't know if you follow those people, but it's getting weird.
Yeah.
And so they call the great work the universal term for witchcraft. And witchcraft and masonry both are searching for the key of the phenomena of nature. And then Albert Pike actually writes about the Force. So now we're into Star Wars territory.
Yeah.
With the Force or the universal agent, they say, if science can but learn to control it, it will be possible to change the order of the seasons to produce in night the phenomena of day, to send a thought in an instant around the world. That sounds like internet, right? To heal or slay at a distance, to give our words universal success and make them reverberate everywhere. This agent, partially revealed by the blind guesses of the disciple of Mesmer, is precisely what the adepts of the Middle Ages called the elementary matter of the great work. It is adored in the secret rites of the Sabbat or the temple under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet or the hermaphroditic goat of Mendes.
Yeah. Yeah, so the great work is to make man think that he's God, and the in Star Wars, Darth Vader would be Pan and Luke would be Lucifer. And
Mm.
that if you notice, Darth Vader is controlled by emotion. The first scene, he instantly starts using the Force to choke somebody,
Hmm.
and that because he's upset like a little crybaby. And
Uh-huh.
but the that's what the because everybody was very upset. I literally somebody came on a podcast, and no offense to them, but they completely lost it and started yelling at me because I was talking about what you just read.
Hmm.
And that they were like, that's not what the great work is, because there's a lot of people that are totally brainwashed by this occult, and that they think that it's about the quote unquote perfection of man, but
Hmm.
they can't see that it's a hive mind belief system. And so they want to think that it's their own quote unquote,
Hmm.
and that it's their own version of it, but they don't see that that is the new age religion which the Luciferians are pushing on people. uh
Well, here on page 70, it says Pike states rather clearly who the initiates consider their God to be. Says the devil is the personification of atheism or idolatry. For the initiates, this is not a person, but a force, the force created for good, but which may serve for evil. It is the instrument of liberty or free will. They represent this force which presides over the physical generation under the mythologic and horned form of the god Pan. Thence came the he goat of the Sabbath, brother of that ancient serpent and the light bearer. So Pan is uh, connected to the serpent.
yeah, that's why that's because Albert Pike and Blavatsky and Eliphas Levi say Pan is the brother of Lucifer, and
Mm,
what they're talking about is they're brothers because it's an equilibrium, it's a balance. But and that the because remember they worship nature, quote unquote,
hmm.
and that the initiate is the personification of this nature, which can be used for good or evil, quote unquote.
Right.
So good to them is Lucifer thought, evil is the desire, and that and then they're balance of, but they're so they are the personification of the oh, where's that at? I
Well,
forget how he words it exactly.
even here says a life is Levi. The devil's not a person, but a creative force. Use the force for good or evil. The initiates represented the force, the mysterious form of God Pan or nature, whence the horns and hooves of that mythical and symbolic figure as the Christian goat of the witch's Sabbath.
Yeah. So it's like Baphomet is Pan, and the counterpart to Baphomet is Sophia, which is Lucifer,
Mhm.
and that they use different symbols, but it all means the same thing, this equilibrium, and that so like the Masonic square and compass, the compass is Lucifer, the square is Pan, and that the that's why to them the you've seen that Eliphas Levi drawing where the god Satan is the reverse of Yahweh, and that
Mhm.
it's so to them the god of light, quote unquote, is Lucifer, the god of darkness is Pan.
And yeah, Pan is very prominent in Aleister Crowley's religion, and there is actually rituals called the Night of Pan. Um, we're not going to go into that gross stuff right now, but the Masons think that Sirius is the home to the Great White Lodge from which all in this sector of the universe is controlled, right?
Yeah, yeah, the
And the
Great White
source of the
Lodge.
secret witchcraft practiced by the hierarchy.
What page are you on? 71.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's what the channeling of this star is seems to be, that's what the third degree is that they're putting on the masses. And so their religion, there you can, so many people on Twitter are believing they're gods in whatever form they want to. They'll get very upset when you point this out to them, but because where I've had somebody literally just freak out on me yelling, and I had to put them in their place and yell back and be like, STFU,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, it was crazy. No offense to that person, but it was just like,
Well,
they're-
no one wants to hear that they're worshiping alien aquatic amphibians from Series B. Um, but so just kind of like to wrap up what we have been talking about tonight, it's been about 2 hours now, and I think we have said stuff that's way over a lot of people's heads. Hopefully it's not that hard to understand, but this creative work, the great work of the Masons, the Rosicrucians, all of these secret societies, um, who, Master Masons are considered Illuminati. They're the illuminated ones by when they are raised and they take off their blindfold and they have seen the light. They are helping bring humanity into the light of Sirius. Now, their creative work, now we're on page 84. The creative work is accomplished when a lodge of Masons becomes unified and is enabled to work together as one functioning, coherent body. Now, again, this is another form of Antichrist. The body of Christ works together with the mind and the heart of Christ, and we are their body. So the Masons learn by participating in such a ritual to work, say, and think the same thing simultaneously.
yeah,
Bailey emphasizes the need for a formulated uniformity of thought so that every move, every action may have behind it and underlying it the concentrated attention and thought power of the assembled Masons. The power of this united thought would be hypnotic in its potency. Masonry, in its true and highest sense, is magical work. Says they will create a focal point for spiritual light, which is the light of Sirius, and will organize themselves into a body of conscious custodians of the mysteries, acting as a distributing agency for knowledge. The effectiveness of this possible work will be paralleled by the increasing sensitivity of the race to telepathic impressions. So, this is meeting up exactly with what me and Courtney were talking about a couple months ago with the UN and their meditation and their what was it called? I can't remember what it was called.
the meditation room. Well, so Cooper says directly that the new church or the new age religion will put man on its altar, and
Mm,
that the meditation room, the cube on the altar, the cube being the altar, that is the symbol of the initiate, just like in Mecca, the cube, that's the ashlar.
hmm
And so they've rewired these religions to where the initiates are all worshiping the initiates of the religion are worshiping the symbol of the esoteric initiate,
Hmm.
and that they're worshiping man, secular humanism, and
Right.
that's why the star of Baha'ism, they've put all those religions on each point of the Ennead because they've already converted those into secular humanism, and that there's an episode by William Cooper where it's called Aid and Abet, and it's about this police newsletter, and this policeman is writing that they only choose secular humanist policemen, and like that they're because they don't want people with real morals and ethics. They
Mm-hmm.
want they want New World Order.
Right.
But like so the Emerald tablets, the Philosopher's Stone, the Golden Fleece, all these symbols, they're all the same symbol of man attaining the hive mind. And the
Yeah, it says they will consciously cooperate with the lodge on high. They will act as a dedicated lens through which the light can shine in the darkness, and the mysteries of initiation will no longer be only symbolic, but will constitute a definite form of activity carried forward upon the earth. So that is really super creepy, and it's no wonder that every time you watch an alien invasion movie, it's always about taking over your mind and becoming one with the Borg, basically. I don't know if you're a
yeah,
Star Trek fan, but you remember Star Trek when they capture him and they make him part of the Borg. That's one of the scariest Star Trek movies there is, but it is a man who is um merged with technology and
yeah,
also has
transhumanism.
become transhumanism and has become one with the Borg travels through space in a giant cube.
Yeah. Well, it's also the Masons call themselves the Enterprise, and
Mm.
that's very interesting. Because I mean, if we were symbols in Star Trek, we would be the Klingons, because we're trying to cling on to antiquity and to the truth and our heritage, and that they are going where no man has gone before.
Right. Right. And even in the very first Star Trek movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture is about also transhumanism. It's the story of the when they shot up that Voyager into space with the plate with like our DNA and our music and our like details of humans. You remember that?
Yeah,
And so the movie is about how that comes back. It went through a black hole and it comes back and like starts killing people. And then at the end, it merges with the guy and they become one. Also, that's the
yeah,
story of 2001 Space Odyssey is merging with technology, becoming a star child, and now you can travel the universe
yeah.
and maybe go back to Sirius where you came from.
Well, you remember that movie Starman from 1984
Mm,
with so in the movie uh is he's on a spaceship that looks like it's an orb. It's weird because it looks just like one of those orbs in modern in the recent news, and
mhm,
it's got like a groove around the center. But so his spaceship, it comes out of the planet Saturn, and then he gets to Earth, and when he's on Earth he has blue magical powers for the star Sirius, and then he
mm,
has seven orbs or seven spheres just like the Kabbalistic belief system. And that, oh, it's such a weird movie. It's but you can see how many of these movies are just totally interlaced with this religion,
mhm,
and that it's so in your face, you know what I mean? And it's like, unless you are initiated or understand the symbols of the secret societies, these movies mean nothing. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook. But to the
right.
adepts, it's the bringing about of the new man, quote unquote, the sixth root subrace to them.
Mhm,
Which the next book, you're gonna have to. I definitely need to read this all the way through too. But this letters on occult meditation, it's quite a long book, but it's the book that I was telling you about where they mentioned the plan about 400 times.
mhm,
So it's obviously their plan. And
yeah.
it's composed by Alice Bailey, and it's something that I found that I was in a great argument with somebody online, and I was quoting this, I was showing them pages from this book, and they're just sitting there denying it, like, oh, denying the Bolsheviks being created by the Illuminists, and it
Mhm.
being a necessary evil, quote unquote, and the entire plan, the great work to turn man into God and the new religion, and oh, it's just very overwhelming to. Well, good thing that we're starting a team here, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're definitely on the good team. So I think this was so interesting. I think it was a home run. I'm so glad that you sent me all these excerpts and that we got to talk about Sirius and the hive mind and the great work. And next time you see me, me and Donut are going to do a show about what it's like to be an initiate in these said mystery cults. So the details of what you would go through if you were to be, initiate of Isis or Ceres or Pan or all of these different mystery cults. What was it actually like? So I hope you
Yeah.
guys enjoyed tonight. And is there any final thoughts you want to say?
Well, it was crazy the other night when I went on Donut's show. I've never had any internet problems like
Mm,
this. And then all of a sudden, me and him were talking like 30 minutes before the show started. And then he's like, "All right, are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." You know, we were talking on video. And then all of a sudden he pushes go and stuff. And then like a few seconds later, all of a sudden my internet's being jammed. And
yeah.
then all of a sudden my internet was shut off and I had to call in on the telephone to do the interview with him because my internet was being jammed. Even 30 minutes after the interview, I couldn't get my internet to turn back on. And like, I thought it was really fishy. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was being jammed, what it would be jammed for, which specific topic, you know? Uh,
Sometimes the internet has goblins that do not want to let you say what you're going to say because Paul and I recorded an entire hour about the movie Turning Red, and that just did not convert itself and went into nowhere, so we had to do that all over. But yeah, there are definitely ghoulies online that are opposing you, so watch out for those, and we'll see you guys next time.
oh yeah. Peace out.